So this concept was introduced by a Bhutanese king. So in the 1970s, people were discussing about different kinds of indices. One is PQLI, Physical Quality Life Index. The other one was Human Development Index. But in the 1970s, the land, which is landlocked between India as well as China, it is a less developed economy, but still it thought that there is a different metric with which we wanted to analyze the development. So it is not a normal measure, it is a comprehensive measure that we wanted to analyze. So this concept was given by fourth king of Bhutan, Jigme Singye Wangchuck. He is the fourth king of Bhutan, who was called as Druko Kyalpo, that means fourth dragon king. So in his 17th age, he wanted to discuss the philosophy of administration because he was given the reign to control the entire economy. So he wanted something to be more than economic output, economic productivity. So he focused entirely on making a happiness indicator and concentrating more on well-being of people and the entire economy. So just look at the pic on and all. So you can see him. So he's the one who had introduced that particular concept to a major extent. So he also integrated all the spiritualistic values and wellness values, physical values, and all kinds of psychological aspects to it. The origin of gross national happiness was started because in the 1970s and also we have witnessed in 1980s, you can see if if a western economy is actually progressing, it destroys the entire environment and it progresses. So since the king was much concerned about conservation of environment, his entire goal was to make a sustainable development for his entire economy and also make sure that they are progressing and keeping every people into social cohesion. That was the intent of the king. So you can see the statute which has been written in there. So what is it enshrined in the constitution of the Bhutan? The Article 9 solidifies its dedication, which quintessentially talks about if the government cannot create happiness for its people, there is no purpose for the government to exist. So this is the statute on which the entirety of the Bhutan works and kick-started with this theory. Since we have already known about the fact it is not merely talking about GDP, it is talking about overall development. So since that makes resultingly it as a multidimensional index which entirely talks about the collective happiness and overall well-being, it's not a mere term. There's always more detail to what is being shown on there. So it talks about many kind of indicators about a personal life, cultural aspect and spiritual well-being of people as well. So the second concept when you are understanding this theory is beyond GDP. Since I've already spoken about it, Western economies who are progressing, they only focused on GDP, and the other economies, less developed economies, they were not doing up to their mark. But what happened was we had to make a change in terms of measuring the metrics of development. Bhutan was a living example back then and it went on to gauge all the other indicators. Okay, so this talked about holistic approach. Holistic approach is not a mere term, it is that term which interconnects all kinds of various aspects that is being incorporated into a single metric. So balancing act. So the name itself says balancing act. What should be the balancing factor here? One side you have to balance the environmental sustainability because you have to conserve the forest resources, because you also need to know that Bhutan is that only one country which has almost 60 percentage of forest being sustained. Okay, so this has led Bhutan to be the first country which is carbon negative. It is following one particular thing, that is it is being carbon neutral. No other country follows it. That is why the king's advice was to keep 60 percentage of the forest share in green cover. So this is the aspect which was given by this particular index. So the crux of this GNH is there are four pillars of gross national happiness. So the first pillar is sustainable socio-economic development. Okay, I'm not talking merely about sustainable development. I'm also talking about indicators of socio-economic development. Okay, economically, if a person has to develop or an economy has to develop, they have to have access to income. They have to increase their income. There should be less gap between income inequality between the richest and different classes of the society, and also they have to access education. They have to access education and healthcare at a very limited costs which they can afford, and infrastructure which will in turn augment productivity and ultimately leading to inclusive growth. So this concept is not a mere concept. Inclusive growth, it talks about we are adding MDG as well as SDG, Millennium Development Goals, as well as Sustainable Development Goals into account, and we are framing this theorem as the best theorem because this theory has propagated all the aspects overall development, including a rare combo of environmental conservation and also socio-economic aspects like social aspects, that is education, healthcare and other aspects, and also the economic aspects of income generation was also on the agenda. The second pillar of this GNH is environmental conservation, which talks about biodiversity, natural resources, ecological balance, and also it shows, like I've already spoken about carbon neutral policy, it also shows that land is covered almost 60 percentage in the form of forest share. So that is how they are safeguarding the forest areas and conserving the environment. Preservation of culture. See, culture of a man, of an economy, is their food, is their spirituality, and is their language. Sometimes all these factors will increase the belonging of themselves at a particular region. So this was taken into consideration, and they have developed a thesis as to how this cultural heritage can be procured and saved at the same point of time. Increase the social cohesion of the people, okay, of the people, that is the citizen. So all those things, arts, crafts, architectures, languages have taken into account, and they have worked on it to make sure they are culturally happy and increasing the social cohesion. Good governance. See, ultimately the person who is leading or the people who are governing the entire economy need to be transparent enough to frame policies, and they have to be accountable, and the transparency between them and their policy should be reached to the common citizen as well. And the main thing is, so regardless of whatever they are, the human rights and the democracy that the government is actually showcasing needs to be transparent to a major extent. So since we have talked about all the four pillars, now it is time that we refer to all the 9 domains. So 9 domains of 4 pillars are well-being of people. It could be either physical well-being or psychological well-being, and ecology, community vitality, health, education, which talks about social development, standard of living, and also good governance, cultural diversity, time use. So in the next slide we can see what that actually entails. Psychological well-being talks about stress, life satisfaction, spirituality. Okay, nowadays you are aware of the fact there is no work-life balance, regardless of what sector you are working. Is it a public sector or is it going to be a private sector? You are visible witness of the stress that is happening to you, not only a commoner, regardless of who the person is, there is always a stress. So that was also taken into consideration. Health in the sense you had diet, exercising, and health care, and all other aspects. Education, good schools that has to be built, good schools that has to be built, which educates people and works in the process of socialization, and all the skills that is required to develop a individual or people to make sure they are robust enough to get job, or let's say augment towards the productivity of the economy. And the time use, okay, work life balance and leisure time, whatever the time that is left out after work should be productively used in order to augment the skills which they must learn. And communal vitalities, helping each others and volunteering and doing some community activities will actually uh, improve the well-being of people, society, as well as all kind of societal elements. So cultural diversity, like I've already said back then, linguistic uh, linguistic freedom, and also securing the culture, festive and events, and all such things constitutes culture. Safeguarding all those things will be the betterment of social cohesion of the common. So ecological health, so despite of pollution levels and also like maligning waters which is present during the production process of industries, we have to make sure that this metric serves as a best way to eradicate all those kind of things. And living standards, see, this metric may talk about standard of, like previous metrics like HDI and PQLI may talk about uh, standard of living, but this one particular metrics may exclusively talk about quality of life, standard of living, and also all positive aspects. Let's say we are talking normative economics here as to how government should ideally maximize social welfare by taking steps that would eradicate all the social evils, economic evils, and all kinds of other aspects. These are some recent developments which have taken place in the recent years. So in 2022, so in addition to what the metrics say, there are like I've already spoken back then, there are uh, nine indices, nine spectrums, or let's say nine domains in which they are continuing this metric. So all these things, when you add it up, it will become 33 conditions. When you quantify all the aspects of it, this should be around 33 conditions of 9 domain, which will ultimately be the parameter to analyze this metric.